Hi, I'm Rob Taylor, author of the article you're currently reading, and in this video tutorial I'm going to look at the post-processing on the final image that I chose. I chose this as the hero shot primarily because it meshes with my idealized processing style and lighting style. The two go hand in hand for me. While I am a huge fan of black and white, like some of the other final images, this also had more to offer on the post-processing end of things. So this is the raw image straight on camera, or as close as you can get. Camera raw default conversions. And how I made it look in camera raw is this. So I set the color temperature to 5600 because the main light was an Einstein on color mode, which means every shot will be 5600 degrees precisely. I didn't really change a whole lot. None of this needed manipulating because I pretty much got the lighting how I wanted it in camera. I boosted the clarity massively. This was more to get the texture on the jeans and getting these cool wrinkles to sort of pop a bit in the very 80s. Now I look at it. White t-shirts. Vibrance down, saturation up. It's just a trick of camera raw. It's not my invention. Other people did it first. It has a tendency to simultaneously make an image desaturated yet pop. Hard to describe, but it makes sense once you realize that vibrance, for whatever reason, vibrance is essentially saturation without the clipping. It doesn't allow the colors to go into chroma clipping, whereas saturation doesn't care, it just keeps pumping up to saturation until infinity. Vibrance, I found, tends to work on cooler images, on cooler colors, the greens, the blues, the purples in the spectrum, whereas saturation tends to seem to work on the reds, the yellows, the oranges within the spectrum. Why that's the case, I don't know. I think it's more a perceptual thing with the human eye, but that's just what I've noticed, so that's the way I use them frequently. And you'll see here that the blue of the jeans is faded almost completely to grey, whereas the skin tone and the hair colour is actually still reasonably saturated like the original image. If we move the vibrance around, I said let's reset them both back to the middle. Moving the vibrance around tends to work. It works on everything, but mainly what you notice is the blue of the jeans. You move the saturation around, and what you tend to notice mainly is the orange of the skin. So, saturation yet popping, or desaturation yet popping, rather. And other than that, all I did was lens correction, as usual. So, onwards. Oh, that's a lot of layers. This image took a very long time. I imported it as a smart object because I didn't originally, and then I re-imported it so that I could use Liquify as a smart layer, so I could keep going in and adjusting as necessary. The Liquify is essentially just to correct this area here, because these jeans are really quite tight, and obviously denim is a fairly unforgiving fabric. It isn't prone to flexing. Then poses like this are going to get rolls where there really aren't any rolls. Didn't go too overboard, just smoothed the outline out really, around here and here. I just shrunk up the size of this area here. And that's it really. Didn't need all that much work. Used a reasonably sized soft brush on very low pressure and just worked it in over time, because that allows you more fine control. So I duplicated the layer and rasterized it, so that became the Liquify layer that I then dodged and burned this stomach area here to try and create a flatter surface. Where the light was falling on it. Didn't work too well, it's a bit lumpy bumpy looking, but we'll come back and fix that later. Next, I had to recreate this piece of waistband in the jeans that has disappeared. So taking it from various places all over these jeans, I popped that back in. Let's look at it zoomed in. There we go. As you can see, it's slightly too sharp, but it works okay. That's made up of a number of layers. Each is a different section, and I've just built them up on top of each other. A fairly straightforward compositing job. It's not perfect, but it does the job. Next, I noticed these lines on the arm from hairbands, so I quickly removed those. Fairly minor. And then it was on to relighting. Oh, not so much relighting as turning the lighting up to 11 that I already had. So we have a dodge and burn layer. I didn't do my usual twin curves adjustment layers for some reason. Maybe because it was really basic work that didn't actually require the need to go back and redo it. And this is where it starts looking like Twilight, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. Joey L did those posters as far as I remember, or at least some of them. Next I cleaned up the floor. That's just a big 9-foot seamless, and obviously with people walking over it, it's going to gather dirt and bits of dust and stuff, so remove that. So we have a nice clean background, smooth graduations, no little pieces of detail to distract from the main subject. Next was a sharpening layer. As you can see from the grey, it's a high pass layer. You really can't see anything when it's zoomed out this far. Easiest way to see is in the eyes. I brought out the eyes and the hair primarily. Everything else I tended to mask out. Bring out some grit. I prefer that. in male faces. Lends a bit of ruggedness and masculinity. Okay, so at this point, the image is essentially done. It's all about the tidy up now. So here, I was still unhappy with this stomach area because it's really mottled and weird, and this tattoo is all stretched and weird. This is why models don't have tattoos, because when it comes to Photoshop work, they really get in the way. So what I did was go to another image in the set where Brittany was more or less facing straight on the camera so I could get the whole tattoo, and then I just copied and pasted that stomach area over, and apparently didn't delete a bit there that needed it. But anyway, I then matched the skin tone and blended it in and trimmed around where it didn't need to be, so it just fit in there nicely. Soft brush, faded it into this shadow area and tried to go over as much of this mottled area as possible. Next, stray hair, which I noticed while I was doing this. Not a big deal, it's just a simple spot healing brush job, although it looks a little on the rough and ruddy side. I could probably go back in and clean that up, but I'm not going to worry about it for now. And finally is a curves layer for the final tonal setting, basically. I set where I want my white point, where I want my black point, exactly how I want the image to appear to the viewer. Because originally it's a little on the dark side and they do pop quite a lot. I wasn't sure that I wanted it all that much, so I've brought that background up just a little bit with, okay, by bringing these points, the white point down slightly, the black point up slightly, just reduce that contrast just a little bit. Much like I've played with some toning as well. Looks like I've decided that the highlights were already warm enough, so all I've done is cool the shadows off and then color correct with this red here to make sure they didn't go too off color, because obviously with a product in the shot we don't want the color to get wildly inaccurate. And that's it. Final image done. It was many hours of work, which could probably have been saved by better posing in studio, but that's a lesson that I seem to frequently have to relearn. Fixing it in post is definitely not usually the better option. So, on that note, thanks for watching.